Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us. We have got a lot to brief up on. As you all know, y'all have been there for all of them. A crazy couple of days for us with a bunch of cases. And also one that we've been meaning to get to y'all for a couple of days now. We just haven't, we keep getting caught up on stuff. So let me go ahead and get started. This right here is a walk that we did a couple days ago on a suspect, and I'll tell you who that is. His name is Raymond Munoz. He's 53 years of age. He has been charged with indecency with a child by contact, which is a second-degree felony. Now, Mr. Munoz had been a registered sex offender up until a couple of years ago. He has got a lengthy history, and of course, this video is something we'll share with all of your news desks here shortly, as soon as we're done here. But the reason that we wanted to make sure and point this out is I'm going to give you the details on this latest arrest, but he's got a bit of a history that we want to share with you all. Again, with cases like this, it's certainly always a possibility that there may be other victims out there that have not come forward, or maybe have come forward and the cases were not strong enough. So let me elaborate. That's all the bookings that he has had into the Bexar County Jail over the years. Now, each one of those, my understanding is that over the years, he has a history of getting arrested for very similar offenses, for either exposing himself to children, young women, little girls, or possibly coming into contact with them. But unfortunately, a lot of these cases didn't stick for whatever reason. And it turned out to be, it turned out to be a wash. We didn't get anything out of it, or law enforcement wasn't able to get anything out of it. This time around, he was booked for the charge, and so what we're hoping is that if any of the victims from any of these other cases would care to come forward and talk to us, we'd love to get, maybe there's more information that has come forward, maybe they remember something else, or maybe we can corroborate something, but we certainly would want the opportunity to talk to any of the victims from these cases, or again, any other victims that we don't yet know about. But what we know about on this case is that a victim reported that this suspect had exposed his genitals to her on several occasions. The victim in this case is a young girl that, by virtue of his living arrangement, he had regular access to this young lady, and again had exposed himself to her many times. And let me tell you how disturbing this is. Many times, this young lady would be asleep, and the next morning would wake up, and he would share pictures with her that he took of himself with her while she was asleep. Extremely creepy, extremely dangerous situation. And I won't go into much more detail about what those pictures contained, but it just kind of tells you what kind of sick person we're dealing with here. And so again, that's the reason that we would like to see either additional charges, some that'll actually stick, unlike in years past. We want to send this person away for a very long time. And so we need help from the community on that. 210-335-6000, or you can also email us at bcsotips@bear.org. Este sospechoso, Raymond Munoz, 53 años de edad, se enfrenta con cargos sobre indecencia con una niña menor de edad. Es una felonía. Se aparenta que este sospechoso, por medio de la situación de su situación familiar donde él vive, tenía acceso a una niña que la niña nos reporta que este sospechoso le enseñaba sus órganos sexuales a ella. Muchas veces ella despertaba y él le enseñó fotografías en su teléfono que él tomó haciéndole cosas a esta niña mientras que ella estaba dormida, y ella nunca despertó hasta el próximo día, y él enseñaba fotografías de sus órganos sexuales y cosas que él estaba haciendo cuando ella estaba dormida. Este sospechoso tiene una historia que ha estado en esa cárcel varias veces, pero desafortunadamente los casos de él en años pasados nunca han llegado, nomás llegaban a un cierto punto y luego ya después de eso no cooperaban las víctimas, no nos llegaba suficiente información. Entonces ya para nosotros, ya que tenemos este caso, quisiéramos que otras víctimas vengan y nos den la información, o si algunas de las víctimas de estos casos que no se hicieron, si todavía quieren hablar con nosotros para ver si podemos poner más cargos sobre este sospechoso, por favor que nos hablen, 210-335-6000. También nos pueden mandar email, bcsotips@bear.org. Any questions on the sexual assault or the indecency with a child suspect?
¿Dónde fue arrestado? ¿En qué parte del condado?
Fue arrestado en su casa. Yo le tengo que dar la información tocante dónde está la casa. Ahorita no tengo esa información disponible, sino que lo arrestamos sin incidente y ahora se enfrenta con esos cargos. Let me talk about the standoff last night. As many of you all know, we received a call last night on the far north side of the county for report of shots fired. Initially we got a call from the suspect in this case. This is him, Anthony Tijerina, 40 years of age. He is currently jailed on 2 counts of aggravated assault against a public servant, which is 2 counts of a first-degree felony. What we know is that Tijerina, at a certain point, called law enforcement and said he was being followed. Shortly thereafter, we got a call from Mr. Tijerina's neighbor, who their houses actually back up to each other. And so it looks like he jumped the fence and just basically got into her home. She knew him in passing as a neighbor. She didn't really know much about him. But I've got to hand it to this lady and another lady that was with her in the house. This guy comes into their house, barges in, armed with an AR-15, sweating profusely, kind of talking gibberish, pacing around, and obviously anybody in their right mind would be scared at that moment. And as I'm sure these 2 ladies were, especially in light of the fact that they had 2 babies in the house with them. They remained calm. They talked to him calmly. They kept him calm as much as they could. They were able to call law enforcement and tell us that their neighbor was in the house armed, and they got themselves out of that situation as quickly as possible. I commend these 2 ladies for having the presence of mind to not panic. At any rate, this is the weapon that he was armed with. He fired several shots at deputies, and one of the deputies returned fire. He was not able to strike the suspect at that point before the suspect retreated into that house, and our SWAT team and patrol deputies established a perimeter. We were able to establish communications with him and convinced him to give himself up. He came out, surrendered, and then this is the weapon that we found inside that house. Now, pretty scary situation for all involved. He was on a second story on a second story of the house and had a pretty high vantage point to see all of us that were down there out and about until the SWAT team got there. And we can just imagine what would have happened had he decided to start picking targets and opening fire on responding deputies. And so we're thankful that this ended peacefully as much as it did, in spite of the fact that there were several gunshots fired in the house at responding deputies and then as well as in the backyard. The deputy that was able to return fire in the backyard is a 10-year veteran with the BCSO. At this point, that deputy, in accordance with our policies and procedures, although nobody was hit, he is being placed on administrative leave for some time and then will be placed on administrative duty pending the outcome of the case. At this point, our Public Integrity Unit and our Internal Affairs units are conducting separate, concurrent investigations on this case, again, in keeping with our policies and procedures. So although we don't at this point anticipate any charges on any of the officers, I think they did the best that they could do against the suspect that had us outgunned at many times. We still have to handle these cases by the numbers. Anoche nosotros tuvimos una situación donde este sospechoso, Anthony Tijerina, 40 años de edad, él nos llamó, él primero nos llamó al 911 que alguien lo estaba siguiendo. Ya después de eso nosotros recibimos una llamada de una vecina de este sospechoso que él había entrado a su casa armado con un rifle y él estaba como muy nervioso diciéndole que personas lo estaban siguiendo. Esa mujer y otra mujer que estaba allí de visita, también 2 bebitos que ellos tenían dentro de la casa, ellas hablaron con el sospechoso con calma, hasta el punto que ellas lograron hablarnos a nosotros para darnos la queja que él estaba dentro de la casa armado. Ellas se salieron de la casa con los bebitos y ya de ahí nuestros oficiales entraron a la casa este sospechoso empezó a dispararles con el rifle. Afortunadamente nadie de los oficiales sufrió heridas, sino que ellos también se salieron de la casa. Él, en algunos puntos en la situación, se salió de la casa a la yarda de atrás, empezó a disparar. Uno de nuestros oficiales, un veterano de 10 años, sí le disparó hacia el sospechoso, pero no le pegó, sino que el sospechoso se retiró para atrás, para dentro de la casa. De allí, nuestros oficiales de patrulla y el equipo de SWAT llegaron, empezaron a hablar con el sospechoso. Él se rindió y dejó este rifle dentro de la casa. Afortunadamente, nadie salió herido en este caso. Lo que se aparenta es que este sospechoso sí tiene problemas mentales, pero ahorita él tiene historia de drogas y vamos a compartir lo que podemos sobre su historia. Pero anoche no parece que estaba bajo las drogas, entonces no se sabe por qué empezó a hacer lo que estaba haciendo, pero él sí tiene historia larga con la ley. Entonces nos interesa, si alguien tiene información tocante a este sospechoso, también nos pueden llamar 210-335-6000. As I mentioned in Spanish, this guy does have a lengthy criminal history. Possession of marijuana, fictitious ID, money laundering, a lot of possession of marijuana cases, some possession of controlled substance penalty group 2, under 1 to 4 grams. It's just a long criminal history, and of course now he's facing these 2 charges of aggravated assault against a public servant. We do not believe he was under the influence of drugs last night. EMS took his vitals, and he seemed pretty stable as far as his vitals, so we don't know what it was that brought up this mental health episode. We do have prior history with him at that residence as far as disturbance calls, but nothing where the mental health team would have responded. So again, if anybody has any information to shed light on anything else going on with the suspect, please call us 210-335-6000 or bcsotips@bear.org. Any further questions on this suspect or that situation?
Why weren't there any charges filed for him getting into the neighbor's house?
Well, at this point, I don't know why. I don't know if it was that the neighbors didn't want to pursue charges. Certainly, if those charges, if it meets the elements of the offense, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it. I think this was a very dangerous situation. So I don't believe that we've taken a statement from those folks just yet. Obviously, we got to let them calm down a little bit. It was certainly a crazy, scary situation, especially for a young mom with 2 babies in the house. So we certainly are looking forward to being able to talk to them under calmer circumstances and get the information. But again, if it becomes appropriate to file additional charges, absolutely we will. And we're still trying to find out as well, how did he get a hold of this rifle? He's got a lengthy criminal history. I don't know if there's a history. We haven't yet found a history of mental illness, but we're trying to look into how it was that he got his hands on an AR-15 rifle. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to brief you all up on the homicide of the little girl at this point. As you know, about 2 days ago, we received a call, 6708 Windsor Hollow, for a report of a shooting. We were looking for an Infiniti Q50, and yesterday we were actually able to recover what we believe to be that Infiniti. It was a stolen car. We were already tracking on that car during the course of we were looking for this Infiniti. We came upon a car that had been stolen out of the Converse area, pretty close to where the shooting. It had been stolen probably a week prior, I believe, or several days prior. And as it turns out, that vehicle was recovered yesterday in Alamo Ranch. An off-duty law enforcement officer was walking his dog. He remembered what he had seen on the media. We were looking for a gray Infiniti Q50. He called us. Sure enough, it was the car that we were tracking on that was stolen out of Converse. At this point, we don't know for a fact that this is the car that was involved in the shooting, but we've got it in our custody. We're going to be executing warrants on it and running some tests on it to see if if we can find any evidence that anybody was firing a weapon in or near that vehicle. And so certainly we'll be giving out more information on that. What I can also tell you is that we have also executed several warrants, search warrants, pursuant to this case as well. We have gotten some evidence. I can't really go into too much detail, but the case seems to be picking up steam again as we're hopeful that we can make some arrests in the capital murder involving this little 4-year-old girl. We do know that her autopsy was a couple days ago, and the details that I've gotten as far as her cause of death, as I mentioned, was a gunshot wound to the head. We do know that gunshot wound, it appears she was shot in the back of the head. And as I mentioned to you all, the weapons that they were using was weapons that we believe they were weapons that we commonly refer to as Dracos, short-barreled rifles such as that. So it looks like a short AK-47, and that thing fires a devastating round, 7.62 round. That tumbles almost as soon as it leaves the barrel of the rifle or the pistol or weapon, and so a tumbling round is going to be a very devastating round. As I mentioned to you all on that house, and we can go back to showing video of the shooting itself on the house. As they're shooting, we were able to find the bullet holes in the front of that house, and the disturbing part about those bullet holes is even though he was almost at point blank range, the bullet holes were not round like you would see a bullet going into a hole. They were elongated, again indicating those bullets were tumbling almost as soon as they came out of that rifle. And so I can only imagine the physical damage that it did to those people. We know the physical damage that it inflicted upon the 5 people that were shot ultimately. And so we're hoping that family can recover from their wounds, physical wounds, but we know that they'll never recover from the loss of that little baby that died, unfortunately, at the hands of these guys. So again, we want to get them into custody. Now, with that being said, we have gotten some tips in this case. People have seen this generated a huge amount of public interest on the media, and we're thankful for y'all's assistance with that as well. We've gotten some tips on our tip line, and those tips have proven to be somewhat fruitful. Now, we are asking, let me ask this specifically. Those that have already given us call to give us tips, we want you to call us back. We want further information. We can't call you back, unfortunately, because as we mentioned, we guarantee you that you'd remain anonymous. So those people that have already called us with tips, we want to get back in touch with you, and we're not able to because you're anonymous. And so please give us a call, 210-335-6000. Send us an email, bcsotips@bear.org. Some of the video that's come to us, the surveillance videos that we've seen on this case, have come through the BCSO Tips email. So that those numbers and emails that we give out have proven to be fruitful. But again, whether you've called or not yet, we want to hear from you. If it's new information, please call us. Even if it's something small, you don't think, I don't want to make a big deal out of it. I just saw a car passing or whatever it is. Call us. It may be just that missing puzzle piece that we need to break a case wide open. And so please give us a call, 210-335-6000 or bcsotips@bear.org. Esta tarde nosotros vamos a dar más información tocante el tiroteo, el homicidio capital de esta niña que falleció 4 años de edad. Ella falleció a causa de un balazo que ella sufrió durante este tiroteo. Estos sospechosos atacaron una casa donde esta niña estaba dentro. No se sabe por qué, no se sabe quiénes son los sospechosos, solamente que ellos, en mi opinión, intentaron matar a alguien. Intentaron matar varias personas y desafortunadamente ellos sí balearon 5 víctimas. Esta niña fue la única que falleció a causa de su herida. Otros familiares de esta niña sí sufrieron balazos. Y nosotros nos interesa arrestar a las personas responsables. Si encontramos este carro que pensamos que es el carro que estábamos buscando, marca Infinity. Este carro fue robado de esa área donde fue el homicidio, varios días antes del homicidio. Anoche lo encontramos cerca de Alamo Ranch. Un oficial que no estaba trabajando, él estaba en su tiempo libre con su perro. Él vio este carro, sabía por medio de la televisión que estábamos buscando un carro similar a este. Nos llamó, nos encontramos con este carro que fue dejado allí. Quisiéramos más información, ya nos ha llegado poca información de este caso y quisiéramos que las personas que nos hablaron con esa información que por favor nos hablen para atrás. 210-335-6000, también nos pueden seguir mandando evidencia videos, fotografías o información a bcsotips@bear.org. Any questions on the homicide?
Yeah, I have a question about the gun. What are those guns used for typically?
So, well, we believe that what they were firing, this is a stock image of a Draco. We believe that's what these guys were firing. Quite frankly, you're gonna hear that those weapons are just for collectors or for, because they have the right to own them, and I get that. I'm certainly not opposed to anybody owning a gun or being a gun collector. In this instance, it's clear what those guns are used for. These guys, I believe, carefully selected those weapons because they knew they were going to inflict maximum injury, maximum death on the people that were on the receiving end of those bullets. They knew somebody was there because there was somebody sitting on that front porch, believe it or not. When these guys came up, they came from me to you, from that person on the front porch. We believe it was a lady on the front porch. So they knew that there were people in that home, and they knew that what they were doing was probably going to lead to somebody being killed. And so I can tell you, in the hands of these guys, just strictly a murder weapon is all it was. And we want to get our hands on those weapons. We want to get our hands on these guys. Again, we're putting out these pictures in hopes that somebody will recognize them. Somewhere there's an ex-girlfriend of these guys, or a neighbor of these guys, or somebody that wants a monetary award for giving up these guys. You can also call Crime Stoppers if you want a monetary reward for it. 210-224-STOP is the number for Crime Stoppers. We're in the process of getting this entered. But again, Crime Stoppers pays for cash for tips if you're able to get them to us. Whatever your motivation may be, we want to hear from you. Whatever your motivation may be, you will remain anonymous. We just want to get these guys in custody, again, before they kill someone else's little girl, just out being, criminals, as criminals will do. Any other questions?
Any update on the 4 other victims?
They've all been stabilized, so they're in the hospital. I mean, I know that some of their wounds are pretty devastating. So thankfully, I think everybody's going to make it. And unfortunately, I believe 2 of the other victims are the parents of this little girl. So I would imagine that the physical pain they're feeling pales in comparison to the pain they're feeling from losing their little girl.
Have investigators been able to speak with them, or
We have been able to speak with them with mixed results. I think part of it is they're traumatized physically and mentally. And let's face it, they're probably on some pretty heavy painkillers. And so we're being patient with the process. We think the information that we're going to need, though, is going to come from outside, people that were not there. That, again, I think somebody out there recognizes these 2 guys and is able to get us the information that we need.
Yesterday you mentioned that you thought this was a target shooting. Why do you believe that?
It was just highly personal, right? If you're just doing a drive-by shooting, as common as those are, unfortunately, these days, a lot of times we see those drive-by shootings and they kind of spray and pray, right? They call it what we call in law enforcement. They spray and pray, just indiscriminately shooting. These guys got up close and personal. They went face to face with that lady that was on the front porch, and they got close enough to that residence to where they knew they were not going to miss. This is in the middle of a crowded neighborhood, duplexes, right? These homes were attached, and yet that's the only home that they hit. Thankfully, I'm glad nobody else was hit. But it just tells me these guys knew exactly what they were there for. They accomplished what they were there for. And now we want to put them in jail sooner rather than later.
I want to go back to that gun. Is that a type of gun that you guys are seeing used more in crimes?
We are, unfortunately. We're seeing Dracos more and more. Was asking about the price point on these things. And so the price, my understanding is that my investigators that are involved in these cases say that these things go for as high as over $2,000 each one. Now and I said, well, being honest, I said, is this a quality thing? Like these things are such high quality that you're going to go pay $2,000 for it? No, they're just in high demand. So supply and demand, the price goes up as the demand goes up. And so it's not that they're such quality weapons. It's that they're concealable. It's a devastating gun in the hands of a criminal. In the hands of a law-abiding collector, okay, I can see where that's not going to be a criminal instrument. But you put that in the hands of a bloodthirsty criminal that just wants to kill people, and it's absolutely going to do that for them every time.
You talk about a lot of tips. How many?
Let me just say we've had several, and they've proven fruitful. Again, we've gotten to run a couple warrants pursuant to this. We ran 2 search warrants yesterday on a house on the south side and then one on a backyard. We did find some evidence that leads us to believe that the folks there had some involvement in this. I don't know that they were the shooters, but again, I think we're on the trail of these folks. I can tell you I've got a lot of personnel working on this thing literally around the clock. They've broken themselves up into squads and are taking over and relieving each other throughout. And they've worked literally through around the clock since this shooting happened. And I don't think they're going to stop anytime soon. They're up there slamming coffee right now, brainstorming on what we do next. And they're continuing to follow up on leads. They're running warrants on cars here in our evidence bay. But I need the tips to continue to come in. 335, 6,000.
So you only think 2 suspects right now?
Well, 2 shooters. I think that it's possible, it's highly likely that there were more people in that car as well. So again, if you are one of the people that was in that car, maybe you didn't know what these guys were going to do. We'd like to hear from you. I'm certainly open to hearing any sort of explanation for why somebody may have been there or what they saw or what they did. I'd like to hear from them. If there's anybody else that's involved, even on the peripheries of this, I want to know.
The person that was out front was that a victim too?
So yesterday, we still have not figured out 100% who that person was. There was other people there that were not injured, and there were some that were injured to a lesser degree. We're thinking it's either a woman that was not hit at all, despite the fact that all this gunfire was going on literally all around her, or there's another female victim that was grazed in one of the lower extremities, just a grazing wound, which is miraculous in and of itself, because you see those guys put 30 rounds, at least 30 rounds downrange. That's the